All right, we might get started. Welcome everyone. My name is Timothy Rankin, and I'm the manager of the educational media production team at Italy. Just get some thumbs up that everyone can see and hear me okay. Just realised I'm kind of floating in the bottom corner there. Am I floating in the bottom corner of that slide deck? That's pretty cool. It's exciting. I might move myself right down the. There we go. I can put myself anywhere. That's kind of cool. Well, thank you everyone for coming. There probably will be a few more people trickling in as we go along, but that's all right. So today we're going to be talking about filming and editing educational video with your phone. And, this doesn't have to be just recording it on your phone. It can be on, if you have a camera, an SLR or other handheld video camera. The skills that I discuss in this session today will translate very, very well to kind of any device. And also, of course, then going into the editing process of how you actually get that footage and you edit that footage in Adobe Premiere. Before we begin, I just want to acknowledge the traditional owners and their custodianship on the lands in which we meet today. We pay our respects to their ancestors and their descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connections to country. And we, of course, recognise their valuable contributions to Australian and global society. And there was a comment in the chat about, will this session be recorded and will it be shared? And yes, so it's being recorded, and I share a YouTube link at the end along with the slides as well. So you'll be provided all that, so you don't have to furiously be writing notes, because there's a lot to sort of take in this session, because we're trying to fit what's normally a 2-hour session into an hour and a half. So we'll see how we go. All right, so today we're going to talk about the entire production process for producing a video. So when we talk about the production process, we're talking about pre-production, production, and post-production. So that's planning and storyboarding, then onto filming, and then onto editing and exporting. And it's incredibly important that you do each of these steps properly, because what people find is that if they don't, correctly choose what kind of format they want the video to be before they start filming, or they don't write some kind of script or storyboard before they start filming, they get to wherever they're going to record and they're not prepared. So they end up maybe not getting enough footage, or they just get completely the wrong footage. Or, we've had instances where people have come quite unprepared and they haven't been wearing the right PPE stuff. So they recorded the video and then realized, oh, we're not wearing the right kind of gloves. So we had to not show any of the gloves in the videos and things like that. So it's very, very important to be very, very well prepared before you come to a shoot. So we'll go through each of these stages today and have a bit of a chat about what they entail. Just a quick thing of what you'll need whenever you're producing any videos is, of course, you need a storyboard and a plan, a bit of, exactly how you're going to be planning out your videos, some kind of device to record on. It can be phone. It doesn't have to be, a really top of the line phone. It can be, a lot of phones nowadays have really, really nice cameras. I often joke with many people that we spend, thousands and thousands of dollars on our nice big camera setups with beautiful microphones and everything, and yet sometimes you can just grab your phone and just press record and it looks kind of amazing. So so phones are great nowadays. Some kind of editing program. We all have access to free editing programs, or even paid ones that are sort of already paid for within our Adobe subscriptions that we already have. But so there's certainly many editors out there. And we always like to say creativity and persistence. So having a really good think about how your video might play out and persisting through it, because some people, they find it a bit daunting to try and think about a video and trying to sort of produce it. But we'll break it down to try and make it a bit easier for you. All right, so the pre-production process, planning and script writing. So the first thing you really need to do is just decide what you want your video to be. What kind of format is it going to take? Some of the most common videos that we do here at Italy, so a little bit about what we do. So we, at Italy in my team, we help academics produce a wide range of different material. So this could be interviews, this could be lab shoots, it could be short lectures. We also do animation and stuff as well, but so yeah, we do quite a lot of things. But we also want to try and empower you to create stuff yourself as well. So sometimes it's just you want to create things off your own back because maybe we don't have capacity, or you just want to try it yourself. So that's what these sessions are all about. So having a bit of a think about what you want your video format to be. And the most common are, presented to camera that might be interspersed with some video footage or images. So this may be you just talking to a camera, presenting on a particular subject, and then it might cut to some other footage that you might have recorded. Maybe it's some footage of you're talking about a particular lab procedure, and then you cut to shots of the actual lab procedure happening in the lab, or there might be images as well that you cut to. Or it might be just all the video footage with the voiceover. So you might go out and just record some stuff on your phone, bring it in, and just have a voiceover. So you don't actually have a person being recorded presenting to camera, just voice over images or footage. That's another way. Or another kind of format is an interview. So we often really like to encourage people to do interviews because we've gotten really, really good feedback that students really love hearing industry perspectives and interviews with people in sort of the outside world about a particular subject. So, taking a particular subject and instead of having it as a lecture, you actually record that as an interview, getting that information the same way. And also we like to keep our videos short. Now, most things we like to keep is sort of between the 5 to 12 minute mark. Now, I know that can't always happen depending on the subject matter. So some demonstrations that you might do they cannot be done in a short amount of time, and that's fine. They can obviously be longer, but if you can try to aim to keep things a little bit short, and if they can't be short, but they are able to be segmented, so they might be able to be segmented into part 1, 2, 3, and those shorter chunks can be 5 to 12 minutes, then that's really, really good because we find students have little pockets of time throughout the day that they can watch these videos, and they seem to appreciate the shorter format. So yeah, some examples of some different kinds of formats. Presenting to camera example. So this example here is, a person, they're talking about particular devices, they're talking directly to camera, and then every so often we get a bit of close-up shots of something else happening within the scene. So that's a good example of someone presenting to camera with other shots being added in, what we call B-roll of whatever they're kind of talking about. And, that can also be interspersed with shots of full screen slides from PowerPoints that explain things in a little bit more detail. So that's perfectly fine. And that's a really, really good way of utilizing the UQ PowerPoint, is doing some graphics in that, even doing some animation in that and exporting that out and adding it into your videos can sort of up the production value as well. And anytime you have any questions, feel free to certainly shoot them through in the chat here. Or even just turn your mic off and just have a yell. That's perfectly fine. It's all good. Another example is a voiceover. So this particular example here is just a person's voice.
Of the autoclave. Check the pressure gauge is displayed as 0 megapascals.
So this person is just speaking over the top of visuals. So this could be, in this case, it's a demonstration of a piece of equipment, and essentially the person is just voice-overing that. Now, the reason why you might choose this over something else is maybe it's just not feasible for the person to explain every step as they're doing it. It might be too distracting. Or it might be too noisy or whatever. So sometimes it might be good if you just want to just record what's going on and then just replace any audio with a voiceover. And also comes down to the comfort level of the person. The person just may not like being on camera talking to something. Or in this case, it's probably not feasible for the person to be constantly looking up at the camera and talking through a process. So it all kind of depends on how it works. Yeah. All right. Oh, there's just something popped in the chat. If anyone in STEM has heard of Manum, it's a great way to add nice maths animations to your videos. 3 blue, 1 brown uses it for animating his videos. It does require a bit of Python for scripting though. Okay, that's a cool tip. Interviews. So as I was saying, interviews are a really good way of getting information that you might get out of a lecture, but in a different way. So a couple of ways you can do interviews. One is what we call sort of a one-person interview, where it's essentially just the question card pops up. So you don't actually have a person asking the question. The question card pops up, and then you cut to the response being spoken. And then in this particular case, we did have a couple of angles. So we did have a bit of a side angle as well for this. Obviously, we had the luxury of having multiple cameras. You may not. But if you do have the luxury of having two cameras, then it is nice to have one maybe at a different angle, one a little bit more sort of front on, one side on. And the reason that's really good is because if someone makes a mistake during a response, you can then fix that mistake by cutting out that footage of the mistake and then just starting the footage again from a different camera angle. And you just don't even notice there was ever a mistake. You just think it was just cutting to another angle. So that's a really, really good option. So there's that kind of interview. And then there's, of course, the typical interview that you would expect, which is of two people.
Thank you, Joseph.
So this is one featuring me. So yeah, a two-person interview where you have a shot, one shot basically facing one person, one shot facing the other, and you have a bit of a discussion between. Again, these are really, really good if your interview wants to be more conversational, and both parties are very happy to be on camera at the same time. This is a really, really good option for that. And actually, this sort of two-person interview is the example I'm going to use today when we're doing our editing as well. So I'm going to show you how you sort of piece that together in Premiere. So once you've sort of decided on what kind of a video format you want to start having a bit of a think about a storyboard. Now, you'll probably hear the term storyboard thrown around, the word script, the word shot list. You'll hear those terms kind of thrown around, but here when we sort of talk about a storyboard, we're kind of talking about sort of everything in one. We're talking about a document that has the script of what's being said, has a bit of list of the different type of shots you want. So in this context, we're sort of saying a storyboard is a combination of a script and a shot list. And it basically outlines exactly what's going to be happening in your particular production. So interviews don't really have storyboards, of course. They just have a list of questions. So that's sort of where they, of course, differ. Although it is a good idea that if you have a list of questions and you have someone you're coming in to do an interview, send those questions to them beforehand so they know the questions they're getting and you know they're going to be able to answer them. We have actually had an example which was very awkward where someone was asked to come do an interview. They came, they did the interview, they answered the questions. Then a week later, we got an email saying, I didn't really like my responses. I didn't feel like I knew what I was talking about because it's not really my proper subject area. Can we not use that interview? So we just sort of wasted that time. So yeah, it's very important that you have a person that knows, yes, I'm going to get the responses I want from this person, and they're also comfortable with the questions that are going to be asked. So if you are going to be going down the route of developing a storyboard, what we always say is try to break things down into smaller chunks. And we do that all the time in our studio that we have here. If people are delivering a piece of dialogue to camera, you don't want them speaking for too long because that can cause mistakes. So what we try to do is try to have it so you either have smaller blocks of text where a person will say just a small paragraph and then they can stop, and then you might change the angle of the video. You might get a little bit closer to the person so there's a change in shot, and then they do another little segment, and then you might cut to some full screen PowerPoint slide or something and they talk over the top of that. So they're not speaking all at once for too long because that can cause mistakes. So changing shot type is a really, really great way of breaking stuff up. So what we do when we're sort of developing a lot of our storyboards is, we have a piece of text and we say, all right, so for this piece of text, this is going to be a person standing, speaking to camera, and we can actually give these little shot types a little a little abbreviation. So for example, an M, in your script could signify that's a mid shot, which means you're sort of getting from the mid of them up, and they're speaking to camera. And then the next shot will be a close-up of them speaking. And so you can put a C in the column to identify that it's a change in shot. So you can use these little abbreviations to just know exactly, how close you're getting to a person. And also, so you can straight away know, all right, well, this shot, I'm getting a bit more wide. This shot, I'm getting it a bit closer. This shot is just real extreme wide, so there's no speaking. And you literally just have like XLS in your column. You'll sort of know that's an extreme long shot of a building or something you're quite far away. So they're really, really good to be able to differentiate the different kind of shots that you're actually going to be taking. So an example of a sort of typical storyboard template is this here. You have sort of 3 columns, shot type and number, which is where you would have the kind of shot you're taking, close up, mid shot, all that sort of stuff, and also number them as well. You'd have a script column where you would actually have what's being spoken. And then the last column is just for other stuff. So it might be just, you might put some images in there of some things you might want to take, or some example shots of some footage you might want to take on when you're on location. And also you can literally just say, close up of hands removing glassware from cabinets. So it can literally describe what's happening in the scene as well. A bit more of a detailed example is this, where I think this was a thing we actually shot. It was a midwifery consult. And I haven't completed all of them for this column, but you sort of get the gist that. So the first person speaking is Josie. She says, "Hello, Molly. Thank you for coming in." So obviously she's talking to a patient named Molly. It's a mid shot, which means it's sort of from the waist up. And then it cuts to a long shot, which might be the whole entire room, for example, and you sort of see everything. You see the midwife and the patient or whatever within the room. So, Loretta's a student midwife. Sorry, so she's talking to the other midwife, and there's a pregnant woman as well. Sorry, I got that wrong. But yeah, so. If one person talking to another person, then you have a bit of a wider shot to establish who's there, and then the general conversation sort of moves from there. And yeah, so you can really just clearly define exactly what's being said, exactly what kind of shots are being done as well. And down this last column here is just you can type in what kind of visuals are happening. So down here it's saying zoom in on hands of the student taking the blood pressure. Visual of midwife, student Molly sitting at a desk. So you can use that column to kind of really describe what's happening within the scene. So we do have a bit of a course that helps you out with this script writing. So it's a writing for educational media course. And so what this does is it's all done on Workday. So you can go on there. It'll give you a bit of an idea of how to write a script, how to sort of have a hook in a video, something that hooks people in. And then so you can then also sort of learn how to add in all the different type of shot types and all that. I've got a question here. Is there any way to ballpark work at how long a video will be based on what you plan in your outline? Yeah, there kind of is. So where are we? So I thought there was something in here. Where was it? At the bottom. There used to be something at the bottom of the storyboard that sort of said how. Oh, here we go. Yeah. So, blah, blah, 130 words equals approximately 1 minute of dialogue. So you can kind of estimate that if you're having a person speak at around 130 words, it's around about 1 minute. But also, you can also get a bit of an idea of how long something's going to take on screen by literally just how long it takes. But stuff like filming stuff in the field is always going to take 2 to 3 times longer than you actually think, because you might have to do something and it might only take 5 minutes to do that something, but then you might have to do it twice, or people make mistakes and pause. So yeah, you shouldn't need to estimate that it might take a couple more times how long it actually takes to actually film. But in terms of getting a gist of the words, I think, yeah, the 130 words equals approximately 1 minute of on-screen time is a bit of a good guide for that. So filming and recording. So once you've actually got a little bit of a plan, you need to start thinking about how to set up your device. So these settings I have here are kind of just what I recommend for most people. Of course, if you have your own device and you're very familiar with it, then just run with whatever settings you're happy with. But yeah, in terms of if you have an iPhone, I've got iPhone settings and Android settings, and the iPhone settings typically are pretty much the same across all devices. The Android ones might be a little bit different, but generally the same. But yeah, so what I kind of recommend people do is have a look at your phone and see what it actually allows you to film, like what kind of formats, what kind of size it allows you to film. Now, if your device has the ability, what I would recommend is that you do try and film at 4K. So if you're unfamiliar what 4K is, got a bit of a demo here. So 4K video is just basically, it's sort of describing it as around about 4,000 pixels wide in terms of the video size. So it's essentially 4 times the resolution of what people consider to be full HD. So what we recommend people do is if your phone has the ability or your device has the ability and you have the space, is try and film at that 4K size. But then when you go to edit it, you actually edit it at a smaller full HD size. And the reason being, this is a really good example here, is that if you just filmed at just a HD size, and then say you wanted to zoom into the footage a little bit, you can do that, but the problem is you lose a lot of quality in doing that, so you get really blocky footage. But if you film in 4K and you bring it into a sort of a lower resolution timeline of 1920 pixels wide by 1080 pixels high, which you've probably seen the word 1080p or full HD, you can zoom in on that 4K footage and still retain a lot of the quality. So that's why we kind of recommend that. Because yeah, you can zoom in on the footage, you can get a bit closer, but also if you only got one camera in your shoot, you can effectively, if someone makes a mistake, instead of relying on, say, another angle of a camera, you can just cut, and you can cut to a more zoomed in shot of your footage, and it almost looks like you've got another angle, but you're actually just a little bit closer because you've zoomed in on the footage. So that's a really, really good tip if your camera can do that. So that's one consideration, is sort of the size of your video, but there's also how many frames per second your video is. Now, that's just basically how video works. You've got a certain amount of frames per second that your video records imagery. And so, yeah, if it's 30 frames per second, then it's taking 30 images per second to generate the video. So, most videos that you kind of probably get online, and a lot of phones nowadays will actually sort of default to the 30 frames per second. At Italy, all our cameras, we've got all SLR cameras, we work at 25 frames per second just because that's sort of the way a lot of our cameras work. It's more of a standard kind of industry sort of one when it comes to sort of higher end cameras, but a lot of phones will be just default to 30 frames per second, which is perfectly fine, because a lot of video you might get online or whatever, you're probably going to be 30 frames per second anyway, and you get a little bit more frames, a little bit more smoother motion than 25. So yeah, it's probably a little bit more flexible. So if your camera does 30 frames per second, just keep it at that. That's perfectly fine. So yeah, that's what I would sort of recommend recording in. And then also if your camera does have another setting for, say, 60 frames per second, that's also really, really good, because what it means that you can actually record at 60 frames per second, and then in the video editor, you can have the slow-mo footage. You can sort of slow it down by 50% and still have really fluid slow motion, because you still got 30 frames because it's half of 60, so you can get that really, really nice slow motion footage. And that's yeah, a really nice way of if you wanting to slow-mo some footage down. Whereas if you had video that was 30 frames per second and then you slowed that down, you can get really stuttery because you just don't have enough frames to have quite smooth motion. Yeah, so that's sort of something to consider. And also, setting up your videos for high efficiency will reduce the file size of your videos while maintaining quality. And most video editors now are quite comfortable with lots of different formats from lots of different cameras. So you don't sort of have to worry about ticking that high efficiency box. On the Android side, it's very much the same, just might be located in different places. So yes, similar kind of rules apply for setting up an Android device. So when you're out shooting your footage, you really do want to, especially if, and turn off HDR as well, yes, because HDR can cause a lot of issues with when you come to editing your footage. So yeah, if your footage is HDR, it looks beautiful on your phone, but when you start bringing it into an editor, it'll cause lots of dramas when you're going into an editor. So when you're going to film your footage, if you don't have an external sort of microphone, like a Bluetooth microphone or anything like that, some phones, or not some phones, like all phones should accept some kind of Bluetooth microphone or something that plugs in. If you don't have one of those, then and you're just stuck with the onboard microphone, then you might have to try and find a fairly quiet place to do your recording. If you're outside, then you probably can't really do much about it, but you might just have to get a bit closer to the person. If you're in a quiet room, that's not so bad. You probably don't have to worry too much. You might get a little bit of echoing, so maybe just try and be in a room that has maybe curtains or has stuff in it, so the audio isn't bouncing off the walls as well. Hold your phone landscape. Never have it portrait unless you really are only using it for social media. And yeah, what's also nice if you are doing any cutaway shots, and cutaway shots are just shots that are separate to your main person talking to camera or your main footage. Sometimes it's nice to just get a bit of background noise of what's happening. So if you're filming, on a street, just keep the footage clean. Just have, keep the sound of the cars driving past, sirens, cafe noises, whatever. Don't be in the background having a chat, because you may want to use that footage and keep some of that nice background ambient sound. So if you're presenting to camera, what's a really, really good way of sort of keeping track of shots, and also to allow time for editing, is to look at your storyboard. I think I've actually skipped ahead, but anyway, if you have your storyboard and you have, say, your list of shots, a good thing to do is like, all right, we're on shot number 7. All right, and we're gonna start off here and action, and then if the person waits a couple of seconds before they start speaking, it'll make sure that you sort of know what shot you're on in the script, so you can kind of cross that off really easily. And also giving a couple of seconds before a person starts speaking means you have a little bit more room to sort of cut when you go into the editor. So that really, really helps. And also just crossing off stuff on a storyboard is just nice, because it's a feeling of accomplishment. Teleprompters. So teleprompters are something, a luxury a lot of people won't have, but you can do a bit of a janky setup of a teleprompter. Teleprompter is just basically like a screen that sits above or sometimes in front of the lens, depending on sort of, it's a piece of glass that reflects up onto it. You might have seen them on the news and other places. So if you can use a teleprompter, they're really good. It's just a matter of having the script on, say, an iPad or something, and you're basically just putting that script above the lens of the camera. So you might have your camera recording, and you might have, pretend this is an iPad, you might have like an iPad sitting on top of the lens, and you're scrolling the text as the person is reading it. So there's that option, or if you want to use your front-facing camera, which some front-facing cameras aren't too bad now. You can get apps that actually allow you to have the scrolling text on your front screen, and then it records with your front-facing camera, so you can just use it just holding it like that, or on a tripod or whatever. So that's quite good. But if you are going to put an iPad or something above the lens, always do it above the lens of the camera. Don't put it beside or underneath or anything like that. Otherwise, the eye line, yeah, it won't look really good. Yeah, and when you're presenting to camera, you probably need to be a little bit more melodic, a little bit more happy with your voice, a little bit more expressive, a bit more projection as well. So because the camera can kind of suck the life out of people as well. So yeah, you want to be a little bit more melodic, a little bit like I am now, probably more animated than I normally would be, talking a little bit louder, because yeah, you want to come across excited and enthusiastic in your videos. Obviously, avoid shaking footage. If you've got auto stabilization, put that on. If you have the ability to have it on some kind of little tripod, you can buy them. They're quite cheap from Kmart. You can get little tripods or little stabilizing gimbals as well. They're quite cheap now. Yeah, and also avoid zooming while you're recording. It just looks a little bit amateurish. So if you're wanting to get a little bit closer to the footage, it's best to sort of just stop recording, move closer, start recording again, and then sort of do it that way. Sometimes zooming in works if it's like like a bit of a piss take, or it's like a mockumentary style or something like that, where you're kind of moving the camera really fast and zooming in really quick or something like that. That's fine. But generally, if sort of maybe someone's demonstrating something, it's kind of nicer to, instead of like slowly zooming in, sort of cut and then get a bit closer, or just have a separate camera that's a little bit closer to the action you can cut to. And it is always good to get a little bit more footage than you need, but of course get your vital footage first. So if you're recording out in the field or in a lab or whatever it might be, obviously get all the crucial footage, but then just get some nice shots around the space. So if you're outdoors in the great court filming something to camera, maybe just get some nice shots of some trees or some like hustle and bustle, or or whatever it might be, some nice shots of the columns, etc., the sky, just so you got something to cut away to if needs be, just to add a little bit of interest in your footage. And always check your footage as well before you leave a location, because there's nothing worse than getting back to the room and realize you've missed some shots, or it hasn't recorded, or something's gone wrong. So be mindful of people in public when you are recording. So if a person is going to speaking to camera and they tend to be sort of quite the focus of a shot, then you will need to get their permission. You'll also need to get permission if you're sort of on private land as well. And sometimes inside public buildings, sometimes they have signs up, or you might need to tell security that you're going to be filming. Just sort of use your judgment when you're going into places, but it's always best just to say, is it okay if I film here? So yeah, just sort of be mindful of that. If you are going to be recording people and getting their voice and focusing on people, might be doing vox pops or vox pops like interviews out in public, or you're going to be getting an expert coming in or whatever. It is good to get a photography and video release consent form. There's a link there for you to download that so people can sign. Composition is also something to be aware of. So when someone is presenting to camera, you want to sort of be aware of how they're framed within a shot. Where have I got? I got the rule of thirds in the next one, sorry. So there's a few things, you need to sort of consider. It's sort of nice, if a person is presenting to camera and they have some things around them, you can either center them or have them offside. It really doesn't matter too much. It kind of depends on what is being demonstrated. But one thing you really should always think about is the eye line and the headroom. So obviously you're always wanting to have the person looking into the lens of the camera. You don't want them looking offside, and that can oftentimes happen if people have got a script or something or whatever beside the camera and they're sort of looking distracted. Always have them looking nicely into the lens unless they're demonstrating and looking at something else. Also, good to have a nice amount of headroom. Don't ever have, top of people's heads cut off or anything like that. Always have a nice little bit of headroom. And if a person is going to be offside, like this example in the bottom corner, we always like a little bit of looking space. So you would never have, so this person here, sort of over here, sort of angled that way, because it would feel a little bit weird. It would feel like they're talking to the edge of the frame, even though they're looking straight. So if this person was here, you would have them on the edge, but they'd sort of be angled more this way, and that's called sort of looking space or moving space. Yeah, it looks a little bit weird if a person is angled into a corner or an edge. Oh, and the closer you get to a person, the less headroom you can have as well. So this person's got a little bit more and a little bit less if you're getting just sort of more of a close-up shot. And also, if you're doing an interview, it's always nice to sort of think about the rule of thirds. You've probably heard about the rule of thirds. It's sort of just dividing up your image into sort of these segments, and then you have essentially the focal point intersecting with one of these lines. And you know, humans like to have sort of focal points and things to focus on and be directed where to look. And the rule of thirds is a really good way of doing that. Respecting a little bit of headroom, respecting the looking space in front. You'd never have a person sort of here angled that way looking in an interview. It would look a bit strange. And obviously looking at the camera when you're doing an interview is never really a good idea either. If you're going to be recording a voiceover, so if you're not wanting to present to camera and you're wanting to record a voiceover, a few ways you can do that. You can do it on your phone, so you can just record a voice memo, or you can record a piece of video and then just not use the actual video part of it. So that's always an idea. But yeah, you sort of want it in a nice, dead silent environment. People don't have the luxury of a room like I'm in here. I can't actually show you the room because it's cutting out my background, but I'm sort of in a soundproof room here. It's carpeted walls. It's quite a dead, so it doesn't echo too much. So you want to do the same thing if you're going to be recording your like voiceovers for your stuff. Have it in a room that has curtains, has things on the wall, has a bit of dampening, has furniture, so there's not just plain walls for everything to bounce off. The best place you can do it is under a doona, believe it or not. So you know, if you're on your phone, you have your script on your laptop under a doona, you can do it that way. Or if you don't have that that ability, what you can do is you can actually run it through like an AI video audio processor. So there's something online called the Adobe Podcast. I think it's called Adobe Podcast Enhancer. I can't remember the name of it. I've used it heaps of times, but can't remember the name. If you just type Adobe Podcast Enhancer, essentially you can upload your audio to there, and it will enhance it, allow you to remove background noise, enhance your voice, and it will sound very podcasty, which is really nice and crisp and kind of boomy. And then it'll spit out an audio file that you can use in your videos. So if you're needing to source imagery for your projects, you can actually access the UQ DAM, the digital asset management system. So you have access to that, and that has a lot of images that you can use of UQ. Also has videos as well. If you just type in UQ DAM, you'll be able to see that, and you can utilize that imagery. Also, you can use a lot of free sites. Everyone has Adobe stock free images through just their normal UQ logins if you go to Adobe stock. But you also have other options as well for imagery and music and video as well. So they're quite good. But just have a look at the licenses to make sure about what you can and can't use them for, and also whether you need to use any kind of attribution for them as well. AI generated imagery. So this is sort of something that obviously is very much with us nowadays. You can't get away from it. So it's a very, very sort of changing space. So you need to use sort of good judgment and just sort of keep up to date with sort of current advice that you hear around for the AI generated imagery. The sort of the general advice at the moment, and this can change depending on branding, but at the moment this is sort of what it is, that you know, if you're needing an image of something and you cannot find that image anywhere, so if you need an image of a person in a very particular environment and you cannot find that image anywhere on any stock sites or anything like that, and you know that image is crucial to your teaching, then that can be generated, but it needs to be as accurate as possible. And needs to very clearly identify the fact that it was an AI generated image. So you literally need to put the fact that it's AI generated image or reference it appropriate near the image, like the ones I have here. Other thing you can't do is if you have an image of an existing person, say you've got like a lecturer or you've got a guest or something and you've got a photograph of them, you can't go in and heavily modify that image of that person with AI. Obviously, you can make small color corrections, but you can't go and sort of do heavy AI replacement. Generally, AI generate image is okay for sort of like scientific and abstract purposes. So if you need to generate, a picture of DNA, then that is fine as long as it looks like DNA. And also, if you just want an abstracty kind of image that is not intended to look real and is not trying to pretend to be real, then that's fine as well. Just remember that those images don't have copyright, so anyone can kind of reuse them. Obviously reference them and avoid generating anything that's culturally sensitive. So, you don't want to be going and generating any images of Indigenous persons or Indigenous artwork or anything like that. So that's very, very important. So that's sort of the pre-production and production stages. So that's how you plan your production. You get your camera set up. You go out. You film, and now you're sort of left with some footage. And what do you do with that footage? So we jump into a video editor. So the beautiful thing about video editors is that most of them all work the same. And if you've ever used any kind of video editor, whether it's a high-end one, you might have used Premiere, you might have used something like DaVinci, you might have used like even more advanced video editors. They do tend to work very, very similar to the more simple ones like iMovie and Rush and Clipchamp and CapCut and all those ones. So, they all have, ability to bring footage in. The footage sits in a little area. You drag that footage onto a timeline, you cut up that footage and you make a video. You can add music, you can add effects, you can change and adjust color. They all work exactly the same, which is really nice. So if you have any skills from other editors, they'll translate really well into Premiere. Or if you're very, very new to Premiere, you can jump from Premiere into another video editor quite comfortably because they all do work very much the same. So the only thing is sort of consideration, so DaVinci Resolve, it's a question about DaVinci Resolve. DaVinci Resolve is a very, very good color correction. So if you want to get really heavy into color correction, DaVinci Resolve is great. Adobe Premiere is also very, very good at that. It comes with your Adobe subscription, so you all have access to it. But you also have Adobe Rush as well, which is also available to you through your Adobe Creative Cloud, which is a little bit of a simpler version. So we'll jump into Adobe Premiere and I'll give you a bit of an idea how you can piece together a video. Now, what I will be using today is a Premiere template that we actually use every day in our work. And the reason that we use a template is because, UQ has quite robust branding policies. So it is important to keep your video on brand. And really, not to get too much into branding, but really all your PowerPoints that you produce, everything that you present really should be using the official PowerPoint presentations with all the correct branding, all the correct fonts. Using the correct colors is a little bit hard, but you can try to do your best. If you're wanting to create some educational media, it's always best to have the correct Premiere template, which has a nice UQ intro animation. It has some text that comes across for people's names. It has lots of nice transitions as well that are all branded. It has an animation at the end with the logo coming up as well. And if you utilize the PowerPoint to create full screen parts of your video to insert in, it looks very, very nice branding wise. So you'll see that I've got a folder here. And another thing that's really important about Premiere is folder structure. And this is kind of important for any video editor, is it's really important to have a robust folder structure. So this is what we use. You don't have to have them named like this, but it's just a good idea. We have an assets folder that we tend to just put stuff in. We put stuff that's not video footage in this folder. In the footage folder is where we have our video. So this is our video files that I'm using today. We have two files. We have Acting Superintendent Rowena Hardiker. So this is a really cool interview we did a little while ago. So we got one camera angle of her, and then the other camera angle is the person actually asking the questions. We have an output folder, which is where the actual final video will be output to. And we have a Premiere folder where the actual Premiere project lives. So this is the actual project file that you'll work from. You notice that there's some other folders that are here. They automatically get generated by Premiere to put in like automatic save files and just other junk files that it creates. So yeah, so when you receive, I'll actually send you this PowerPoint template, you'll get this folder structure. So I'll open up the template and give a bit of an idea of what Premiere is and how it looks. All right. So this is Premiere. For people who are new to video editing, it can be a little bit confronting because there's a lot going on. But essentially, this panel over here is where you kind of can control a lot of your footage. You can change a lot of the settings within your footage, like its size, rotation, opacity, all that kind of stuff. Over here is where when a video is in, and there is some stuff in here already. This is where your video actually plays, and you have some play controls down here. Over here is just another area where you find some other, we will be going into properties. So properties is where you go in and edit some of these templated items that branding has. So this is the name tag that comes across, and properties is where you change the details of these branding assets that are in our template. And also this is where you go in and you color correct things as well. So you can go in and affect the colors of your particular pieces of footage that you might have. But we'll talk about that in a moment. And down here is the timeline. So the timeline is where you piece together your video. So it's where you actually bring in your clips and you put them all together and you edit a video. And as you can see here, it does have all those branding elements already in here, ready for it to go. We have a nice animated intro. We have the name tag pop up, and we also have the branding at the end as well. So really, really nice and robust branding. Over here is where you actually import your files to. So this is where all your files kind of live when you want to utilize them within Premiere. Now you will notice that these branding elements, they already kind of just work, and that's fine. And if they work, then that's hunky-dory, but sometimes they may not work or they may go missing, and it may mean they haven't installed properly or something. So if these just don't work for whatever reason, or you create a new project and you can't find these, what you can actually do is you can actually just go to that folder of assets, and they're called MOGR, or motion graphic template files. So basically to install them, you can literally just double click on them and they will actually install into Premiere. I've already got them in here, so I'm not going to overwrite them. So basically you just double click on them and they'll install, and then over on your graphics templates here, this is where they'll exist. And there's quite a lot of others here as well, but you'll see, this intro is here, and this what we call the super is here, or it's superimpose, it's what it's called. And if you want to utilize that, you can actually click on it and drag it across and drop it in, and that's how you place those elements in. So getting footage in, there's a few ways you can do it. You can either double click in this gray area here, and that'll bring up a dialog box to import. You can go File, Import, and that will bring up same dialog box. Or you can literally just from Finder or Explorer, you can literally go to your footage folder and drag stuff in. So I'm going to do it that way, but it can work any way. I'm going to grab that, hold down, drop it into here. All right, and now I've got a folder in here with my footage. And I can double click on that footage and I can play it, get a bit of an idea of what's going on. I can use this little blue playhead to drag through it, see what's going on. I can do the same thing for this other clip here as well, drag through it, see what's going on as well. There's a few ways that you can get stuff in a timeline. One is you can literally just click on it over here and just drag and drop it in. That's one way you can do it. Another way, and that'll bring the whole entire clip in. Another way you can do it is if you have it double clicked up in here, and just for example, say you've got this video here and you really only want, say the interview doesn't start till, 2 minutes and 17 seconds, then I can say, all right, that's where I want my video to start. Press I on the keyboard, it creates what we call an in point. And all right, my interview finishes at 30 minutes and 14 seconds. I press O on the keyboard for out. And then what I can do is then click on the video, drag it down, and then that's only bringing in that section that I actually selected. So there's multiple ways that you can do that. For me, I'm going to bring in them whole just because I'm conscious of time. So you will notice what happened. Actually, I'll do that a bit slower because what you'll notice is when you drag stuff in, you'll see it kind of comes along in these tracks. So you have lots of different video tracks and lots of different audio tracks. And these are all video tracks above this line, and these are all audio tracks below. We don't need to sort of overcomplicate exactly what they are. Essentially, it just means that you can put stuff in any of these, and the higher it is in the stack, means it's going to sit over the top of whatever is there. So that is sitting over the top of this, and that's all that means. There's lots of other things going on here, but we won't go into any of that. Audio is the same, except it doesn't really matter what order this is in. Like your audio can be all the way down here and it's still going to play fine. So it doesn't really matter what order that is in. All right, and I'm just going to use this to zoom out a bit so I can see my whole bit of video. You'll see that you can drag that in and out. So I do have another piece of video as well. So this is the person the person actually asking the question. So I can drag that and pop that on top. You'll see now that I have on top is this video of this person. All right, and then underneath is the video of the other person. And if I want to ever reveal or hide anything, I can click the little eye symbols here, and you'll see if I click that eye symbol, it'll actually hide the layer that is on that symbol, and I can make that layer bigger by going over to the right here and expanding that out by dragging that little dot. And then so that sort of can hide or show certain layers. Now this is an interview, so I kind of know that what's happening here, that I've got this person asking questions and this person answering them. And there's always a bit of a debate when you're piecing something together is, well, what video do you have on top? And so for me, I actually tend to have the person asking the questions on top. And I'll show you why. Actually, no, first what I'll do is at the moment, you'll see down here we've got our audio. This is what we call our audio waveforms. Now, at the moment, you'll see that this clip here that I'm selected is the person being interviewed talking, and this clip here is the person that's asking the questions. Now, in the waveform, you can actually see the questions being asked. See, this is where this person is actually speaking, which is a beautiful thing because it makes editing really, really easy, because I know that essentially I can just go through this and do a very, very rough cut where I essentially just show this person speaking for this bit where they're talking, and then for the rest of it, and you can see this is where that other person is speaking, I can then show them. But of course, at the moment,
how it compares with previous ways of
it's all out of sync. It's not sort of in line with each other. So what we want to do is first of all sync these two clips up so both their audio tracks are lined up and in sync, so they play at the same time. And you do that by simply selecting both clips, right-clicking, and go synchronize, and then just leave it, if it doesn't say mix down, just leave it as mix down and go okay. And then it'll process. The longer the video, the longer this will take. Hopefully it won't take too long because we don't have that time. Oh, there we go. Cool. That was actually quite fast. And so you'll actually be able to see where this person's asking the questions and this person's responding just by the way those waveforms are sitting. So what we can actually do, you've probably heard of there's a question in the comments about clapperboards. So clapperboards, they have two functions. One is they allow you have like a board that has like a clap. You would have seen that in film. The clap is so all the cameras in the room hear a very distinct sort of noise, which makes it easier for them to sync up. It also has information about the shot being taken on there as well. Nowadays, you don't really need that as much because, you can synchronize audio without that. But honestly, on some shoots, we still do it for some reason out of habit, even though we don't need to. All right, so what I can do here is show you some of the tools that we can use to start cutting up some of these sections of the video. Now, you'll notice that as soon as I move my cursor to the beginning of any of these clips, it turns in this little red marker here with the arrow either pointing inwards or outwards. Now, if it's pointing outwards and I drag out, it's not going to do anything because that's the start of the clip. There's no more information there. But if I click when it's going inwards, I can actually drag that in, and that's essentially me cutting the start of that particular clip. Now, I'm not going to be completely accurate where this video starts because, again, conscious of time. So I'm going to do it very, very rough. So I'm going to say, all right, let's pretend this video starts around about here, for example, where her waveform is. So it starts there. And then so I then get this other bit of footage. And because there is actually footage to the left of that, I can actually drag it. So now my video starts there. I can do the same thing to the end. I can say, all right, well, my video finishes here. So I can go to my clip. It's pointing inwards. I can click and drag, and that shortens and cuts that footage. Do the same thing to that other clip. It never deletes it. It just basically hides it. You can always get that footage back. So that's basically cut the start and the end of my interview. But now what I can do is I can go through, and because I can very easily identify the waveforms, I can actually go over to my razor tool here, all right? And I can go over and I can say, all right, well, that person has stopped talking there, so I'm going to make a cut, and this will sort of make perfect sense when I do a few of them. So I can go along, make some cuts. Now, not every video is going to work like this where you are going to be able to make cuts like this, but it's just sort of good practice to sort of show you how that works. So very roughly, I could go in and do that for the whole entire video. And then what I can do is go back to my normal selection tool, click on that clip, and then so there's two ways you can kind of do this. People are probably tempted to just click on that and delete it. So what that actually does is it actually deletes the audio for that clip as well, which in some cases you might want, but in this particular case, we want to maybe keep the audio in there. So I'm going to undo that. So what we can do is we can actually, now that the audio is in sync, we can actually select all of those, all of the video for, actually, no, what we can do is select it all because we want to unlink it all. So what we're going to do now is select all the all the clips, right click and go unlink. So that means that now when I click on a piece of video and delete, it's going to keep the other audio there. And then so now what will happen is as we play that through.
And advocacy for the Domestic and Family Violence and Vulnerable Persons Unit.
Yes, so
you can see that that cut was pretty much bang on. One other thing you'll notice is that the video isn't fitting. And that's because it was filmed in 4K, but our timeline is actually a high definition or a HD timeline, which means anything that we bring in is going to be bigger than the frame. So what we can do is we can actually right click on our piece of video and we can go fit to frame. And what that does is it will fit that piece of video to frame. And now if I go over to effect controls in the top left here, you'll see that my scale is at 50%. All right. And then so actually what I might do is I might just make me a little bit smaller. There we go. Let's get rid of me. Actually, let's put me over here. There we go. So you'll see that my scale is 50%, and I can actually click and drag that percentage, and you'll see that I can actually move that person up and down. So I can move that to 50%. Now, the beauty with that is that, yes, I can just have it like that and it's fine. But if that person made a mistake and I didn't have another angle to cut to, I could scale that up a little bit to say 90 and then use these other position values here to reframe that shot to get a little bit closer. Actually, that's a little bit close. Let's go back a bit. So you can essentially make it look like it was a totally different shot, which is really, really good. Or you just might not have liked your original framing. Now these numbers here, these are a bit confusing. These are actually coordinates. Now I'm not going to go into what that means. The easiest way to explain it is literally that first number, if you click and drag with your mouse left and right, it'll just move your video left and right. If you click this number and move it left and right, it'll move it up and down. That's basically just how it works. There's this whole thing about that's the coordinate of the center of the video in relation to the size of the video. Yeah, but we won't go into that. But just drag those and yeah, that's how it works. So that you've got scale, you've got rotation values as well. And you've also got percentages that you can crop your footage in as well. So a few different kind of settings you can change as well as opacity. And of course I can just go edit undo to undo all of that. So I can do the same thing to this other shot here. I can just select all of those, right click, fit to frame, and then that frame nicely. All right. So, yeah, sort of go along, you just keep doing those cuts. So I'll just keep cutting those out, etc., and I can go along. And then obviously once you've done a bit of a rough, I might go in and then adjust very slightly. So, you know, if I feel like that person's clip ends too soon or too late, I can adjust that to make that a bit nicer.
Great.
So yeah, so that works out really well. And that's why these little waveforms are really, really handy. So the next thing to sort of have a bit of a think about is maybe correcting some of this footage. So when we get our footage looks actually vastly different to this. I don't know if I actually, no, I can't show it. But when we get our footage from our cameras, we actually film it in a really, really flat profile, which is quite fascinating. It actually looks, when we get our footage, it actually looks a bit like this. It looks really, really weird. So yeah, so we film in something called log. And so our footage actually looks almost washed out and awful, but then we do a lot of heavy color correction because it's such high quality footage, the color information is there that we can bring that color out. But for this example here, I've just sort of pre-colored it and provided it at a nice color. When you film with your cameras, it's going to just spit out just a nice colored image, and then you can make some slight adjustments, which is sort of what I've done here. I've kind of synthesized that. So I've actually done a few things to this footage on purpose. I've probably made it a little bit too warm, maybe a little bit too bright, or maybe hers is a bit dark. So first of all, her footage here, what's wrong with it? It might be a little bit warm, as in a little bit too orange. Might be a little bit dark. So what we can do is you can click on that footage, go over to the panel here where it says Lumetri color, and this is where we can make some changes. So color temperature, you can drag that left and right. Right makes it warmer, left makes it cooler. So we might cool this footage off so it's not so orange. But then sort of orange is a little bit, maybe takes a little bit too much of the color out. So we might tint it with the slightest bit of pink. And we can turn that off by pressing the FX button here. And that'll give us a bit of a nicer idea of how it looks before and after. Maybe make it a little bit brighter. Contrast just kind of punches thing out. Oh, it is. Oh, why is that blank? That's weird. Oh, that's annoying. I wonder why it's doing that. Sorry about that. Let me bring this window in. That's very strange. Sorry about that. Yeah, so you have your little sliders here that you can increase the warmth or decrease the warmth. But the warmth, taking that warmth out can kind of make people a little bit too cool looking. So you might add a little bit of pink in. It's all kind of to the eye. I mean, oh, look, there's a whole science behind color correction. Like, yeah, you can go into your you can go into your settings and look at scopes and look at different kind of skin tones and all this sort of stuff. But really, for you guys, just adjust it till it looks nice. So you might do things like brighten this up a little bit. Contrast sort of just makes images pop a little bit. Highlights sort of take out the bright parts of the image. So you might want to, if you've got some really bright parts that are really overexposing it, but you don't want to darken the whole scene down, you can actually change the highlights, which kind of just affect the brightness of the bright parts. And the shadows affect the brightness of the dark parts. So you might have really dark aspects of your video, but the rest of it's quite bright. So you just want to bring out those dark aspects. So yeah, you can just have a bit of a play around, and you can click that little FX symbol there to show the before and after. And you can do exactly the same thing with the other clip as well. So you can go in and make those adjustments to her shot as well. And the nice thing about Premiere and a lot of other video editors is the fact that if you make an adjustment to a clip here, for example, I can actually click on that, go edit, copy, and then select all the other clips associated with that. And you probably should have done the color correction before you chopped it up. You can go edit, paste attributes, and then you can actually select what aspects of that footage you copied actually pastes, which in this particular example will be Lumetri color. And if I go OK, it's pasted that same color correction to all the other clips, which is really, really handy. So the next thing to think about is your audio. So what you want to have a look at is when you're playing your video through,
to cause harm, even though that is
what
the impact
levels
of their
are
behaviour on
your,
their partner or family
your
member.
voice hitting.
It is a very broad.
So at the moment, my voice is hitting around about between -12 and -9 decibels. Now, again, there's a whole science behind that. But what we like to export our videos at is we like our audio to, at sort of its highest point, kind of hitting either -6 or just above -6. So what we can do there is we can play the video
Definition
through,
of what domestic and family violence is.
select the audio we want to affect, which is essentially what we want to do. Is we want to affect hers, because that's her speaking. We want to click on her clip. Again, you do this before you chop it up. I've done it backwards. Is you click on her, you go to Essential Sound over here. All right, and you'd go down to clip volume, and you just press play on the
So
keyboard.
it does include
spacebar.
physical violence,
adjust
it does
clip
include
volume.
coercive, controlling behaviour, threatening behaviour. And, you know, that definition, coercive and controlling behaviour, it could be as discrete as, you know, a certain look.
But that's kind of good. It's sort of the highest points they're speaking sort of hits above that -6, which is really nice. And then we do that to the same to the person asking the questions, which is the other audio. We go down to a finer spot where they're speaking.
Family violence, and that, you know, you do have cases of both willful and non-willful domestic and family violence. So it's very complex and
Right, and then so at the highest points they're hitting above that -6, which is really, really good. And the nice thing about it is when they're all selected and you make any changes here, those changes will happen to all the footage. But remember, if you want to make a change, you've got to select it all and then make the change. The other thing you might want to do is play around with some noise reduction. So there might be a little, it's going to be hard to hear through this, but there might be a little bit of background noise, some hissing or something happening in your audio. That sort of comes with most microphones. So what you can do is you can select the audio, go to reduce noise, and then probably just start it at maybe around about 3 and then have a listen and just see if you sort of get rid of that nice background noise. So you have just nice clean audio. And then you'd want to do that to the other audio as well. Go reduce noise, maybe start around around 3 and see how it sounds. But yeah, but don't go too high, otherwise it could get a little bit robotic. So
and, you know, quite sort of, you know, it's a...
Yeah, it might be hard to hear, but it's reduced a lot of that background noise, so it sounds really, really nice. So, other things you might want to do is, might want to have your clips fade out. So maybe at the end, I may want to have
Results
my
in me changing
video fade out, or maybe just fade into another clip or something like that. Or so maybe I want this
regards
shot
to policy.
to fade in. You can do that very, very easily by just right clicking on the edge of that and going apply default transition. And the default transition
So that kind of
fade. I would never put a fade like that. It looks terrible. But you might want to do a fade on some other kind of video. Same with the end. I can right click on the end there where my little symbol changes to that red symbol and go apply default. And then that will.
So the other thing that I do in my role is.
And the same thing you can do for audio as well. So if I go to the end of the audio clips here, I can right click on the edge of those, go apply default. Again, other clip, apply default.
An opinion and their input.
And the audio will fade out. And at any point you want to make, and at any point you want to make those bigger, I can just zoom in a little bit, and just scroll across. And I'm using my mouse to scroll across, but of course you can use this bar here. You can go to those transitions and click the edge of them, and you'll see your little cursor will change, and you can make those longer. So that
everyone's
fade out
voice and opinion
happens longer. And then, so what we want to do now is just sort of piece our clip together with our branding. So what you can actually do is you can actually click and drag click and select all that footage, click, and then you can actually drag it along. And what I can actually do now is I can press Z on the keyboard and just press to zoom in so I can get a little bit closer to what's happening. And then I can go back to V, that's the shortcut to go to the selection tool. And then I can click this footage, drag it, and what I want to do is I want to drag it so it sits nicely in line, and I'll just move my scroll bar up here so I can actually see. This little bit here is where are we? This little bit here is where we transition from the intro to some black, and then it transitions to the actual first part of the clip. So what I want to do is just make sure that that video lines up nicely with the end of that, and then it fades nicely in with that. Now, this is actually just black blocks that fade in and out. They're not actually a transition. The reason that we do that is because it's just easier and quicker for us to sort of add that in on top of all the other layers, because we've got multiple layers underneath that we want to fade in and out. So instead of going in and right clicking on each thing and going apply transition and fading, we just literally put some blocks of color fading in and out above to make it a lot easier. So you do that to there, and then what you would do is you would then grab this stuff, which is the end, and you can kind of click and then drag that, and then just, actually it's easier to just go edit, cut, and then drag all the way to the end. Click here. So this is your playhead layer, so just scrub along, go edit, paste, and then basically drag that so that sits right up against that end of that clip like that. So then what happens is that will again have some of this purple, this color fading in. So not black this time, but purple.
And their input.
And then it will fade to the logo at the end. So yeah, just butting that right up against that clip will put that fade in automatically, rather than having to right click, go apply default transition, changing colors to purple or dips to different colors. It's much easier. Then to make any changes to these supers or superimpose, that's why they call them super, because they superimpose. You click on it, you go to graphics templates, that's wrong. Sorry, you go over to properties, which might be hidden behind this little arrow here. So you go to properties, you click on it, you give the person their name, you type in their position, you can change whether it's on the left or the right of the screen. Leave it at Arial, because a lot of people don't have the Gotham font. But so leave it Arial. And then the same thing is for this one here as well. You can go to the video title, give it a video title, give it a subheading, etc. And then, yeah, that's kind of come together. Now, in terms of exporting this out, that's kind of really, really easy nowadays. Oh, and always, make sure you go File Save as you're doing your projects. This will autosave every few minutes. You can go into the settings and go into autosave settings in Premiere and tell it, how often you want it to save. So it probably will autosave automatically, but you may want to check those settings. But it's always best to go file save anyway. So to export your video out, we might actually give this a name. You see how it's just called course something. So I'm just going to give this a name, interview with blah, blah, blah. So that's the name of my video. You'll see it's now there. And then what I can do with either that selected there or this selected, you can see it's got a blue bar around it, which means it's selected. You can go to export up the top. All right, and this is where you can choose a preset to export your video out as. And what I mean by preset is what kind of format it export out as. And the most common is an MP4, which is very compatible with YouTube, with uploading to Echo, all those platforms. So look, what we recommend is just go to export, put the preset something like high quality 1080p is perfectly fine. There's also YouTube presets as well in there that are pretty good as well. But just starting off with high quality 1080p is perfectly fine. Then what we want to do is adjust its quality, because at the moment the quality is a bit too high. And I know that sounds strange, is that you want to reduce the quality of your video, but particularly if you're uploading it to Echo or if you're storing it locally, you want to reduce the file size a bit. At the moment, this file is going to be 4.5 gig, which is a lot. In video terms, it's not, but if you're sharing it online or you want people to download it, it is a lot. So what you want to do is reduce the quality of your video, and not to go into too much jargon. There's a heck of a lot in here that is terrifying. Easiest thing to do is to go into video settings, click more, and then you go down to where it says bitrate and change that to 5. And it's gone from 4 gig to sort of just over 1 gig, which again seems like a lot, but you don't want to go any lower quality than this, because the video is half an hour long. So you can imagine that, if the video was only half as long, it'd be only 500 meg, etc. So I know we sort of said to try and keep videos fairly short. Interviews are a bit of an exception. They can be a little bit longer, because a lot of the time interviews can just be listened to in the ear. You don't actually have to watch them because there's no content popping up on the screen. So that's why with podcasts, interviews, sometimes they can be a bit longer because people can just pop it in their ear and they don't actually have to watch something. So you can put that to 5. I recommend H.264 just because I think it's sort of the most compatible nowadays. I know H.265 is becoming a lot more popular and used, but for now, H.264 is sort of, I think is a pretty good standard for now. All right, so basically you just give it a file name, which will come over from the timeline. Location, you tell it where you want it to go. So you click the little blue path there, and then you go and find your output folder, go save. And then, the other thing to note is that here we've got listed the entire source, which in terms of the range of what's being exported. So that means that the entire video is going to be exported from start to finish, which is great. But there's some cases where you only want a certain part, or sometimes something called source in and out or other settings will be there. But probably what you want to do is just keep entire source and then just scrub through with your little blue thing and make sure there's no extra footage in there, which it's not. It goes right to the end. That's great. Because sometimes what can happen if you got entire source is if there's some clips that are somehow stray and after your video finishes, because sometimes you cut a piece of video out and you put it somewhere else at the end of the timeline and you forget about it. And then when you get to this point and you go entire source, you might get to the end of your video and then there's a few more minutes and then there's another clip that you forgot about. So if that's the case, then you can either go back to edit, go to your timeline and just delete that clip that's at the end. The other option is you can actually change it to in and out. And then basically you can use these little blue bars to only export a certain portion of your video. So say your video actually ended there and there's some other rubbish over here, you could actually just drag that and it'll only export between those two bars. So that's another option. But once you've done that, you've told it where you needed to go, you've gone in, you've changed that to 5, you go export, you'll get a little bar saying how long it's going to take. And then once that's done, you'll have an output, you'll have a final MP4 video. And then if I just cancel that, yeah, you can then just go File, close project, obviously save it, and that's your project done. And then whenever you open up Premiere, there'll be the list of your previous projects that have been listed there for you to open up really easily. But hopefully at the end of the day, you'll have inside your folder, you'll have an output, although I cancelled it, so it didn't work, although I got a little bit of it. And yeah, and you can upload that to nearly any kind of place you needed to upload. Yes, as I said, I will supply the PowerPoint presentation as well as this this template. And yeah, if you have any questions, you can always email me. I know a few people have had to rush off because it's very much home time. But if anybody has any questions they want to fire at me, whack them in the chat or come off mute. That's no dramas at all. Yeah, let me know. I can just float around. Maybe I can make myself a bit bigger. Oh, there I am. Oh, wow, now I'm taking over the whole desktop. How's that hair going? But yeah, if anyone has any questions, fire at me.
Hi, Tim. While you're doing that, I'm just going to launch a very short poll to get some feedback about this session.
Awesome.
So if everyone could give that a go, that would be very much appreciated.
Sounds good, thank you. And if you want us to produce some media for you, you could always just do a bit of a Google search. Oh God, I'm blocking it, aren't I? I've become too big for my boots. Where am I? Go away. You could always just do a Google search for the educational media production team at Italy, or you can scan QR codes or whatever. So yeah, if you want to utilise our services, which are free to the university, free to academic staff, if you want us to produce your media for you. So thank you, everyone, and yeah, I'll stay for a few more minutes while you're doing that survey. Fire any questions at me, that'd be great. Oh yeah, there's a link to us, there you go. Has the video of the officer been released? I would be interested to watch after the session now with a different perspective. Has the video of the officer been released? Does that mean the video of this session? I'll probably won't be able to get it to everyone until probably tomorrow because I'll just do a bit of an export and clean it up. So I'll send out an email tomorrow with the slide deck and a recording of this session. Do we have availability? Yes, we do. So the best way to approach us is if you go to that link in the chat there, there'll be a little box there for to submit an expression of interest. And then you'll be able to type in some information about what your interview is about, timelines, all that sort of stuff. And then I'll receive that expression of interest and I will contact you about how we can go forward. But yeah, that sounds fine. No, the video of the commissioner hasn't been released. No, I've just got to try and remember what course that is for. I can certainly ask the person who, I'll make a note of that. I'll ask the person who interviewed, ask Deb, who was the interviewer, whether she's okay with me sharing that because it's a very, very interesting interview. Unfortunately, that department she's part of is getting disbanded this year or next year or something. So, which is really unfortunate because it sounds like a very, very important unit, the domestic violence unit. But just after we did the interview, the government announced that they're winding back the funding for it or something. And so, yeah, that was interesting to see how that pans out. And yeah, so if anyone wants to engage with us, head to that link, submit us expression of interest, or even just send me an email. You can just do a search in emails for Timothy Rankin, and I'll pop up. So that's fine. Expression of interest. There you go. There's the link. Awesome. Thank you, everyone.